Tony Forster is a former Chief Mines Inspector and he knows well the re-entry options that were submitted for the government's consideration. Earlier this afternoon, I asked him if the one option that was chosen really is the least dangerous.
It's not particularly dangerous. It would always have to be an issue of going in the drift. The drift would always have to be made safe. And the second entry options were basically potentially thousands of metres away. So you can't discard the condition of the drift. And there's so many unknowns. We know what we know at the moment from previous entries and from the robots going in and the film that was taken at that time. But really, we won't know until the drift is re-entered. So I agree with Dave Conn that we'll only know those things when we enter. It's an assessment I made some years ago as well. And re-entering places like the tunnel is, again, something that's happened many times before. And it's a systematic process. There will be a reassessment that will follow a dynamic process where the issues are examined, it's considered. There's a re-risk assessment done, and it will be done in a steady, very systematic process. So I've got no concerns about that. And we'll really only know what we're dealing with in terms of the tunnel structure when we clap eyes on it.
So a significant part of this is taking the police teams into the site so that they can examine it as a crime scene forensically and also look for remains. So in your professional view, after an explosion of this nature, what might be salvageable from the critical sites inside?
I think there'll be a great deal that's salvageable because the areas that we're particularly interested in, pit bottom and so on, were shielded from the main blast that came through the tunnel. And remember, we've had access to the outer area of the tunnel for some time. So I've been able to look for a good part of 3 years I had on and off looking at the condition of conveyors and different bits and pieces that have been subject to the blast. And they certainly hadn't been consumed by flames or mangled beyond recognition. So I think there's a great deal. And I have been into mines on several occasions after there's been blasts and forensically recovered the situation, and we won't know until we see it. I mean, there's no point in assuming all this stuff. There's a lot of assumption has gone on over the last few years, and I think it's time to stop that. I think it's time to start dealing with the reality and deal with what we actually see. And when we see what's available, then we'll be able to make a more solid judgment.
So at this point, you wouldn't be able to offer a judgment on how realistic it is that remains will be salvaged, brought out for the families?
In terms of human remains, I think it is quite realistic. It's something we can't rule out, and I've got reasons for saying that because we know that there were people in the drift or around about the drift entrance at the time. We know there's been subsequent blasts. We know that 2 people walked out. Daniel came out, who helped his colleague to come out. So otherwise, we wouldn't have known about them. So the truth is, again, a lot of assumptions because that's all people have had to go on. But now we're going to have an opportunity to go and have a look at this drift, and then that will open up a whole different line of discussion around about the technical forensic recovery and potentially the human forensic recovery. And I do believe that there's a higher likelihood of both.
And what other answers could we get from this?
Well, we could get some. It might not give us absolute answers, but it might narrow the in terms of what happened. It might narrow some of the options in terms of the things that may not have happened, in terms of particular pieces of equipment that may or may not have been switched on. So there's some theories about why the mine exploded. We know it was a gas explosion initially. And the way you carry out these investigations is you go through it by a process of elimination. You don't shoot straight to a pet theory and then try and find the evidence to fit. You actually do the exact reverse. You go through a process of elimination. So this would be the beginning of that process of elimination. To be honest, has never started because there's never been access to the drift. So this is the process beginning.
Do you think they will be able to tell if anyone survived the first blast?
That's a moot point. It depends what we find. I think if we found human remains, if we found evidence of any bodies where attempts have been made to open self-rescues, those sort of things, I think that would strongly point towards the potential that somebody made an attempt. And those are the sort of things I think would be they would be indicative. So if somebody has made a realistic attempt to open a self-rescue, then like Daniel, who made an attempt to open his, he wasn't successful. He managed to survive by taking gulps of air through the compressed air range. But if we found people who'd been attempting to open self-rescuers, if we found those self-rescuers which had been manually opened, even if they'd been blown down the drift, for instance, then that might point in that direction. But I think it's not fair to speculate on the families. It's all speculation. I really don't want to go down there. I'm just telling you some of the things that might point towards us. So evidence is what we're looking for.
Tony, what will your role be?
It's dependent on the Pike River Agency. I've made it clear from the outset I want to be involved in the re-entry, and I've had a reasonable indication from Dave Gaughan that I will be involved in the primary team that goes in. I certainly want to be part of that group. I don't have any particular claim to it, except that I have, been along this journey for quite a long time. I've always said that I was prepared to re-enter, and I think from the family's point of view now, they want a representative there, and I'm very proud to fulfil that role if that's what's chosen. But ultimately, it'll be down to the Pike River Agency to decide. I think I do bring a particular skill set. I do have particular skills in re-entering. I've probably done more re-entries, to be honest, than anyone else, including anybody at the Pike River Recovery Agency. But that's a decision for them to take.
Have they given you any indication,
I'll be led
Tony?
by Dave.
You've obviously made your. You've obviously made it clear that that's what you'd like to do.
I think they've indicated that I would be. Yeah, I think I've got a strong hand in that particular option. But as I say, I'm not going to overplay that. It's an operating mind. Dingy's the manager, and Dave Gaughan's the chief executive. They're the ones that call the shots, and I'll be led by them. I hope that I can make a contribution, and I'll be disappointed if I can't. But for me, the main thing is that the re-entry is going ahead. My personal role in it is secondary.
And I was talking to Tony Forster there, who is a former Chief Mines Inspector.